Okay, we are back. I'm very happy to have Kit Yarrow on the Goldstein on Gelt Show. She's an award-winning consumer psychologist, a professor, a best-selling author. In fact, her book is called Decoding the Consumer Mind. Kit, how did you come up with that name?
Well, I think technology is a big part of understanding consumers today. So the word decoding was attractive to me. The rest of it just fell into place. I think consumers are really different. Their minds are different. How they shop, what they want, how the decisions they make about when and what to buy are really changed. And so I wanted to give marketers in particular an overview of these big psychological differences in consumers.
So I'm glad you're talking about it from that side, about the way consumers think about things. One of the things I've noticed, and tell me if this is just anecdotal or if there's actually some truth to it, is that people seem just generally more unhappy about their money situation. Now, I talk a lot about the overall credit card debt and problems people have, but they just seem like they don't have any hope. Is this true, or is it more psychological, or is there any logic to this?
You know, I wonder if that's kind of part of a change that I've seen in consumers in general, where they're a little more anxious and a little more angry. And I looked at psychological studies. I'm actually a clinical psychologist by training, and noted that around the world there's really increases in these sort of negative emotions, and therefore how people look at really a lot of aspects of their life, whether it's relationships or money, is tinged a little bit by these more negative emotions that people feel. And I think those emotions have, there's a long list of contributors, but some of it is the recession. Some of it is a feeling of the world being less controllable or understandable. We get news in these little snippets that come flying at us. People, I think, don't take the time anymore to digest and fully understand situations. And that makes people a little bit more anxious, which makes everything seem a little less controllable. And you can understand why money in particular would be hit heavily by those negative emotions.
All right, so help me out here, because in my day job, in real life, I'm a financial advisor. I only do the radio gig once a week when I get to speak to neat people like you. But I, as a financial advisor, one of the main topics I'll talk to people about is the importance of saving and long-term investing. And when I talk about long-term investing, I really mean 5, 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 years. And we are in an era, the internet era of instant gratification. And frankly, it's hard to sell people on the idea of long-term investing, even though I don't know anything else that you can do if you want to have ultimate success.
There's no magic bullet for us? Good heavens.
Well, I don't announce it on the radio. I mean, talk to me later, I'll tell you. No, I don't know what to say.
Right.
There's people who are so impatient, and they've got to wait it out. But how do you teach them?
No, and that's such an excellent point, because I think that we see in all areas of research this increased level of impatience. I think it has a lot to do with our use of technology, which has made this rich, stimulating, immediate gratification world kind of the norm. And therefore, we want everything faster. We want more turnover in our products. We want information at our fingertips. Patience is really at an all-time low. And I don't think it's ever been easy for anybody to be patient when it comes to investing their money. But I think probably your experience as a financial planner is felt around the world, where I think all financial planners are probably seeing that there's even increased levels of impatience in investing results. And the market reflects that as well.
Very true. I think the level of
I don't have the solution, though, unfortunately. I can only validate, but I wish I had the solution.
All right. Well, okay. So given that, let's look at it another way. Is there a way that I could present the ideas to clients to make it sound a little more palatable?
Yes, absolutely. So, one of the things that we've seen in consumers is that this impatience applies also to how they digest information. And so people have become really more influenced by things that are in graphs, in charts, visual, pictures. I mean, you see the explosion of places like Pinterest, where people actually can digest information in nearly an entirely visual way. Words are kind of losing impact in favor of sensory experiences and symbolism. I know words are a symbol, but I'm talking more about color and charts and other ways that you can present information. So this is at least a start, that people actually believe things more. There's been studies to prove this, that things are viewed as more credible when they're presented in charts and graphs than when they're presented with a block of text or with words. So maybe that would be helpful. Try to present the information in as symbolic a way possible. The other component of this is that consumer trust is really abysmal. I mean, it's just plummeted in the past few years. And so with a lack of trust also, people become ironically much more self-reliant. And so they're even less likely to believe professionals, just at a time when they probably could use professional help more. And so some of this, again, can be mitigated to some extent by the way that you present the material, offering people, I think, reassurance in a sense that they're smart if they if they take these particular actions. What people want is reassurance, a sense of control, and the ability to truly understand in a very fast visual way the important information they need to know.
Very interesting. We're talking with Kit Yarrow, who is the author of the best-selling book, Decoding the New Consumer Mind. Now, Kit, I know you focus on the mind itself. Have there been changes neurologically in the way that our brains, in fact, are wired in this new generation compared to maybe even as short as 10 or 15 years ago?
Absolutely, even in just 10 or 15 years. And a lot of people talk about how our younger consumers, our Gen Yers, who are now all the way up to 35, or Gen Z, how they're so different neurologically, how they really process information differently because of their use of technology. But these same principles apply to older consumers as well, because our brains are actually malleable, and what we use becomes more efficient, and what we don't use becomes less efficient. And therefore, we're all sort of getting these rewired brains because of our use of technology. The result of this is part of what we just talked about: shorter attention spans, a much higher bar for stimulation, less tolerance in a huge way for anything that requires thoughtful consideration, like things that are ambiguous or things that are complex. Basically, all the stuff that you're trying to talk to people about, Doug. So these rewired brains, I mean, it truly does, I think, change. I focus on marketing for the most part. It changes how people understand and acquire information about marketing, communications, and products and brands. But for somebody, I think, that's trying to help people to do the best with their money, it would maybe even be more profoundly applicable.
Interesting. I recently came out with a book. I wrote a book about how the strategies of chess can be applied to investing. And my co-author, Susan Polgar, who is a world chess champion, was the chess side of the book. And one of the things I asked her is, when she started playing chess 30, 40 years ago, the training was very different from how it is today. And she said, in fact, it's the kids today who are learning chess at a high level, basically they sit around and they're sitting in front of a computer the whole day, as opposed to what she did, which was she would sit around with chess coaches and analyze and analyze and analyze and get an incredibly deep understanding of what's going on. So I think in the chess world also, just like you're describing, there's
that's really interesting. And it really, actually, that's really similar to a lot of the advice that I give marketers, which is, try to help people understand by doing rather than by telling or showing, and that's so interesting that that's actually in this world that I don't know anything about, which is the chess world. That's very cool.
We're going to play chess after this.
I'll have to learn how first.
So do you think this is a positive development, that people are experiencing the world in this rapid pace, or do you think it would be nicer if we could all kick back, and think more in depth about ideas?
This is the hardest part about writing a marketing book when you're actually trained more as a clinical psychologist, because I constantly want to interject my judgment about these things.
This is a show where you can give your judgment, don't worry.
But it's not my training as a professor to do that, and it's not my place in a lot of ways. So I try to stay really as objective as possible and just understand the world is going to move along with or without my approval. But the one area where I ended up feeling it was impossible to resist was the impact of technology on our relationships. Because all of these other things I think we can adapt to, and there's pros and cons to everything that we're doing, all the ways we use our brains. I mean, there's definite advantages, and there's also problems that we have to get over. And I kind of trust that human beings do manage to get over these hurdles. But the one thing we can't get over is feeling uncared for, unseen, alone, 5 million friends, but nobody really cares. I get to say anything I want, but nobody's really listening. And that's kind of a side effect of our use of technology that concerns me a lot more than how we process information.
Has there been evidence that has created greater divorce or greater depression or anything like that?
Yes, and that's actually where it hit me the hardest. The research I do is ethnography. I go into people's homes or go shopping with them, and I do very personal focus groups with small groups of consumers. And so I feel like I get to very much understand them. So in my research, but also substantiated by academic research, is this trend towards more anxious younger people who also report less satisfaction with their relationships. This makes sense because older people tend to use social media, for example, to facilitate and orchestrate existing relationships, but younger people are really all in a different way. And their sort of sense of anxiety around their relatedness to others and their satisfaction with relationships is lesser. And so this has to be of concern to anybody. And I think, again, I always trust people. I just trust the human race to kind of figure out these problems. So I think this is being talked about now. I think that, whenever I bring this up in either my writing or my speeches, people really want to know more and want to talk about it more and want to do something about it. So I think a solution will be down the pike. But right now, there's a lot of suffering in that department.
Wow. Well, we've certainly come a long way in this interview itself, talking about the personal finance side, but then realizing, oh my God, that the world might be headed for doom. But I like your optimistic outlook.
Oh God, I don't want to end on a downer.
No, but I think you're optimistic that you said that you believe, and I am certainly hopeful that humankind will find a way to overcome technology and get to be friends and talk to people once again. Kit, we're just about out of time. We've been talking to Kit Yarrow, who is an award-winning consumer psychologist. She's a professor, a fantastic speaker, best-selling author. In the last few seconds, Kit, just tell us, how can people follow you and follow your work?
Oh, thank you. My website is kityarrow.com, my first and last name.com, and I put where I'm going to be speaking and so forth on my website. And then my book is Decoding the New Consumer Mind, and I think it's available everywhere. All
right, we will put links to that at the show notes of today's show at goldsteinongelt.com. Kit, thanks so much for your time.
Thank you. It's a pleasure, Doug.
You've been listening to the Goldstein on Gelt Show with money maven Doug Goldstein. Doug's weekly radio show is heard around the world. If you miss it, you can download the podcast at www.goldsteinongelt.com. The Goldstein on Gelt Show gives you up-to-date financial ideas so you can get on the path to financial freedom. If you'd like your questions answered on the air or off, send Doug an email to doug@profile-financial.com. It's your money for your future, so join Doug every week to build your wealth on the Goldstein on Gelt Show.